think we're live.
Well, good afternoon, folks. This is the American Firearms Association show with a breaking update, breaking news for gunners. We have the whole team here, Chris Dorr, Aaron Dorr, Ben Dorr, and Patrick Parsons with a major update, guys, and it is not good news. So get into this broadcast, guys. Let us know where you're watching from. Your comments, as always, help the video be seen by more gun owners. But, folks, everyone knows that Joe Biden is an impotent, old, China-bought and paid-for loser who cannot pass his agenda in Washington, D.C., at least not through Congress. Gun owners successfully blocked him in the Senate throughout 2021, and it was a great thing. And for a lot of gun owners, they might think, well, the midterms are less than a year away. We're going to take back the House, maybe the Senate, and we're going to send this guy in a lame duck status, and that's it. The fight is over. But, folks, we got some bad news here because that's just not the case right now, because for the next 3 years, this aging tyrant's staff has the ability to use executive orders to advance gun control, and that is the big breaking news today. Joe Biden has had the ATF bypass Congress, and they have published today on the Federal Registry their new executive orders, which are being run through the ATF to make criminals out of what could be, what, Chris, tens of millions of gun owners in two major ways.
Well, it's dang sure going to make a criminal out of me because I have a bunch of these things. I'm a proud owner of pistol braces. I'm a proud owner of 80% lower firearms that I have finished out myself. I'm damn proud to own them. It's an American thing to do, but that's exactly, they're coming after people like me. They're coming after people like you with this. And the entire reason why they are is because gun owners stood up. The moment that corrupt degenerate got into office, they stood up and said, oh, hell no, we're not letting your gun control come through Congress. Bullshit. And so now we get the backdoor approach.
So, guys, what we have right now is two big executive orders. Again, they began as executive orders. They then run them through the ATF. The whole goal here is to bypass Congress. Again, everyone knows that Biden can't pass his agenda through Congress. They're just going to bypass it with this. The first thing they're going to do is go after your 80% lower receiver-based firearms. Probably everyone watching this show right now knows about 80% lowers.
Yeah.
If you don't, just Google it. But these firearms are homemade firearms that you finish in your own home with your own tools. And you could be anything from a Ruger 1022 to an AR-15 to a Glock to a Colt 1911. Anything you can think of almost. These firearms would eventually become illegal unless they are registered with the federal government through the NICS system. That is number one. And there's no way of really knowing how many Americans own these firearms. That's the whole point. They're not registered. They're not in a central database. That's why we like them. But estimates would say at least tens of millions of people own these firearms. But, Ben, the other one is a big thing for you as well, and that is it deals with the pistol braces, and it basically would make it a crime to affix a pistol brace to a modern handgun.
And I mean, this is some total garbage here. Everybody knows why the pistol braces were created. They were created to make pistols more stable. They're created for folks in wheelchairs and folks like me to stabilize an AR-15 pistol. So they sit here and go, this is all about firearms safety. This is all about getting guns off the streets. Now, what you're doing is making guns that exist less safe by removing things like the AR-15 pistol brace. I've got a whole bunch of them. I love them. I like how small and compact they are. They fit nicely in a lot of different carrying bags. And this is, I think, millions and millions of Americans own these. They're 100% legal. This is some bullshit that we're looking at right here. And we have to do everything we can do to stop it.
Well, estimates from the Congressional Research Office themselves say that between, and this is kind of a range here, but help me with this, between 10 and 40 million pistol braces already exist. And, and we discussed this a lot in previous shows. One of the things that became kind of established doctrine for legal precedent during Heller back in 2008 was the idea of common use. And we saw this just last fall when the court ruled, not the Supreme Court, but a federal court ruled in California, of all places, that AR-15s had to be legal because, after all, more of them were sold per year than Ford F-150 pickups. And the justices said, for heaven's sakes, if this is not common use, then what is? Well, the same thing has to apply here. 40 million pistol braces are in circulation right now, according to the Congressional Research Office. If that doesn't account for common use, I don't know what else would.
Yeah, one thing, Aaron, and I'm going to go off track a little bit. One thing pisses me off. I had a buddy the other day. You know, he's in the gun rights community like I am as well. It just totally pisses me off. He comes in there and he says, "Oh, Biden's done, man. Biden can't do anything. Biden can't." And then, Aaron, you sit there and you say 10 to 40 million people are going to be affected. Literally, I heard that this weekend. And now you tell me 10 to 40 million people are going to be affected by these rulings that go into effect in June and August. And I've been around gun rights people for a long time. All I can say is wake the heck up. Okay. We had this big win against David Chipman. I was in the Congress at the time. I remember it. Tens and tens and tens of thousands of calls were coming into Capitol Hill. But wake up, guys. These people are not going to quit. They're not going to go away. They're just going to keep coming after us. And I think that's what we're seeing with this ATF ruling here. And I know Aaron and Chris and Ben, we're all still digging into the details on this, but
Yes.
Wake up. If you claim to be someone who cares about the Second Amendment, it's not over, folks. Biden's not dead, despite the fact that it's, FJB and all this other stuff. It's like, wake up. These people are just nonstop.
Well, that's what
That's
we're going
why-
to see.
that's why everybody
he
needs-
knows he can't pass it through Congress. This is going to be the fight that we're engaged in for the next 3 years. They're going to try to bypass Congress because they have to. He can't get the Democrats all on board right now in the Senate when they own that chamber. When the American people come back and flip one or even both chambers in the fall, the only option they're going to have is legal action like this. This is going to be the fight that we're engaged in for 3 years because Biden's got that much time left. So you're right, Patrick. We cannot just sit back and say we have shut this clown down in the Senate in 2021. We're in the clear. No, he has all kinds of these legal actions. So, folks, we have an action alert on this video right now, posted in the comments section, and we're asking everybody here right now to immediately sign your petition telling Congress to eliminate the ATF. And you've heard from other organizations probably for years about trying to reform it and trying to clean it up and trying to put some integrity and some honor back in the ATF. This is a dishonorable institution. They never had integrity. Their only purpose ever was to harass gun owners, most of the time law-abiding gun owners, and that is exactly what they've been doing. Of course, we stopped David Chipman. That was a major accomplishment for AFA members, but these guys are complete animals who are trying to come after gun owners any chance they have. The ATF has to be eliminated, and that's what your petition right now tells Congress, is to eliminate this organization.
That's really what pisses me off about this whole thing here, and we'll talk about some of the ways they're trying to get around. They want to make it easy for people to make non-felons out of themselves, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what really pisses me off here is that there's a way for getting gun control on the books, and it's through Congress. These people, by doing this stuff, I mean, it's not like I'm kind of going around different topics here, but gun owners rose up and said absolutely hell no to David Chipman. And if, in many ways we cut the head off that snake of the ATF, but apparently there's still losers going around there who are coming up with this stuff, and they're doing it on behalf of the Biden administration. It really pisses me off that we say no. We said no to David Chipman. We said no to federal gun control. And yet here they are, these people, going around behind the scenes and trying to implement this crap through executive fiat. This is not a country of rules. This is not a country controlled by a freaking king. This is America.
Right.
And the land of rules and law and order. And these people, by taking this route, tells you that they have no regard for the rule of law. They have no regard for your rights and freedoms, and that they will do whatever is necessary to implement tyranny because they are tyrants.
Well, when the hell were agencies allowed to make law? You're an agency,
right?
You're just. I mean, on your best day, their job is supposed to facilitate different parts of the governmental process and making things work smoothly. Who the hell do you people think you are, making law and trying to turn 40 million gun owners into felons because of this crap? And I think everything we've been saying here is true. I don't think a lot of people realize that government exists to preserve government. Okay. Everybody knows that government exists to protect and enrich itself. And so if one way of destroying freedom doesn't work, like we're talking about here, well, we've stopped a lot of gun control in the U.S. Senate. I mean, there's all sorts of administrative actions, lawsuits, all sorts of federal judges who are willing to throw gun owners and the Second Amendment of the Constitution under the bus. There's tons of different ways in which the powers that be can utilize the power structures that they have built to annihilate our freedoms, our rights, and all of the things that we hold most dear. So don't sit there and go, well, the Senate doesn't have the votes for an assault weapons ban or whatever the issue may be. They can do these little things, big things, little things, and all these administrative actions and all these different agencies or lawsuits, use the court system. They can and are doing this right now. So sign your petition. This bill is House File 3960 or House Bill, House Resolutions, HR. Hey, there's a lot of states, things are different. But this is Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill. This is not a pipe dream. This isn't a concept. This is a bill that exists, that's gaining traction. We need to get this stuff passed, signed on. So sign your petition, I think, right now. Telling your congressman to support eliminating the ATF. They don't do anything for the American people.
It's important to note, I think also too, that the Republicans, a lot of them anyway, the good ones, we're not discussing them like Marjorie, but for a lot of the feckless Republicans in DC, this actually works out great for them. You see, this way they can have this stuff passed in the law and they never have to vote on this. We saw this in 2018 with Fix Nix. This was a great thing for the Paul Ryans and the Mitch McConnells of Washington, D.C. These guys went on in there and they said, well, we don't want to have to vote on this crap, right? So you've got everybody from a Joni Ernst to, all these people across the country on the right that are not very to the right, more centrist than anything else. They didn't want to have to vote on this. And so they're very comfortable surrendering the authority they've been given in the Constitution to make laws for we the people and give this power over to these bureaucrats, because then they're not in the hook either way. They didn't vote yes, they didn't vote no, they didn't do a damn thing, and our rights suffer as a consequence of this. So we can't, it's not just that Biden is trying to bypass Congress. For far too many pathetic Republicans right now in D.C., this is the easy road. Let the ATF do it. Let the American people attack the ATF. Put that anger on the ATF. And I can sit here as a do-nothing Republican and no one's going to say a word.
And this is what made the NRA's betrayal of gun owners in 2018, I guess, 18, 2019 or whatever. Their betrayal of gun owners on the issue of bump stocks such a damnable offense. Because instead of saying, oh, yeah, well, let's deal with the bump stock ban in Congress. Let's put it to a vote. Instead, they issued that letter, said, we are requesting a ruling from the ATF. Bullshit. The moment you let the ATF in the door, and this is why all the groups you are watching this on right now all signed a letter to President Trump on the bump stock ban. The moment you let the ATF in the door to start making executive decisions on what constitutes a firearm, which is what this does, which is what the bump stock ban was, you are implementing a system of gun control by executive order instead of laws, and it totally bypasses the American voter. That's what made what the NRA did so wicked, so wrong, so evil back then. Because they basically said, you know what, we're going to get out from the pressure that our own members are putting on us to stop this thing. And we're going to say, oh, just like Aaron was talking about there, like Republicans like to do, we're going to say, oh, it's not us. It's not us. Kind of like these lockdowns. All these governors are saying, oh, well, don't blame me for wrecking the economy in this state. It's the virus. It's this. It's that. No, it's you politicians and it's you other gun rights organizations that aren't drawing the line in the freaking sand here.
It was Wayne LaPierre who went straight on. He went right on Deface the Nation. Or maybe you mentioned that already here.
Yep.
And just said the ATF needs to do its job and eliminate the bump stocks. He straight up told the ATF to do it. He didn't even say, you know what? You want to ban a bump stock? Put it on the floor.
We should put that video. We should put that video out. Let's put that video out at some point again. That's a great video.
It legitimized everything. The NRA legitimized everything we're in right now. Like John Wemmer just said, the bump stock law opened, or rule, it should say, opened the door. They started this. Now the Democrats, the left, they're driving a freight train through that open door.
Here's what I would say to gun owners out there. Things are about to get worse before they're going to get better.
Yes.
Okay. Despite what we may have wishful thinking about, we have Joe Biden for another 36 months. Okay. Now, maybe we have these massive victories in November, but what gives you any positive or fuzzy warm feelings about Republicans that they're going to take action immediately to dethrone or de whatever the hell the word is about the ATF, take their power away once they get back into control? I mean, I saw just over the weekend, Chuck Schumer, anti-gun wacko Chuck Schumer in New York City. He had a press conference. He wants to double, if I read it right, he wants to double the budget of the ATF. Currently, it's about $1.6 billion. I looked it up. Well, he wants to add another $1.5 billion, double the ATF. They have 5,700 employees. I think Chris or Ben or Aaron mentioned it earlier. David Chipman, he was defeated over the summer, but okay, who's there now? I mean, what is going on? We need answers to this. And a lot of people are going to be asking, guys, well, what can we do about it? What are we going to do about it? Well, you can pass this bill. We can pass that bill. But in the short term, guys, I mean, it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. We've just got to keep the heat on our elected officials and don't let these Republicans who are about to ascend into power in 2023 get away with doing nothing about this, because this really is a story of our time. They're trying to criminalize tens of millions of us around this country in one fell swoop without even it being a law. It's just a straight up rule.
Well, we all know how good it felt when they all came into power in 2017. We had Trump in the White House. We had the GOP in charge. Now we have all three branches, executive, and then we had both chambers of Congress. And then, as we've said in previous shows, not a damn thing happened for gun owners. That's actually not quite true. Nothing good happened for gun owners, but we did get a bump stock ban and we did get fixed NICS. And that's what happens when gun owners, I think, when we cede our activism and our power to national organizations like the NRA. We all sat back and said, they got it. We have control. We kicked out Hillary Clinton. Her aspirations are done. Maybe they're not forever. We'll see. And now is our chance to go on offense. And we got nothing. And I see one of the comments here. I wanted to mention this guy's name. Daryl McLam says, bump stocks are a waste of money anyway. And Daryl, I'm not trying to hit on you too hard, man. I'm sure you're a great guy, but you've got to understand, we do as gun owners, that philosophy is fatal to your grandchildren's right to keep and bear arms.
Yes.
Do you not understand? It's not about the bump stock. It's not about the pistol brace. It's not about the 80% lower receiver. It's about giving these people a single inch. And if we give them an inch, we see what's happening now. We gave up on bump stocks. We didn't, but gun owners did, because, that's a gimmick. Nobody needs one of those. And we gave up on that. And now fast forward 3 years later, and now we're in the fight of our lives over 80% lower receivers and now pistol braces. We have got to get rid of this failed NRA-driven ideology that nobody needs of this or nobody needs of that. It's our freedom. And our grandkids are counting on us to get off our asses and stop this erosion. Because, guys, we don't get these freedoms back. Once this is gone, we don't get these pieces back. It's just not going to happen.
Hey, guys, real quick, I just want to interject. For those of y'all asking, we got a lot of people, how do we become a member of AFA? We had a lot of people, dozens and dozens and dozens of folks become members over the weekend, guys. It's very simple. Go to joinafa.com. joinafa.org. You can type that, write that down, or remember it. Joinafa.org. Come on board as a member of the American Firearms Association. It's $35 a year, less than 10 cents a day, guys. It's very simple. You get a t-shirt and decal when you join. Get on board our organization. Many of y'all know us through our state level organizations. Joinafa.org. Joinafa.org. Check it out, guys.
A lot of people are saying they've already signed the petition. Josh has signed, John has signed, Bobby has signed, Scott has signed, and Mark has signed, and he wants to know if he can sign it 100 times. Go for it, Mark. But everybody else, get in there, sign your petition telling your congressman that you want them to support Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill to eliminate the ATF. And so people were talking about how the FBI would maybe take over portions of that. The bill, I think, specifically eliminates certain things that the ATF is doing currently and would make them no longer under the sphere of the government on some of that stuff. That's what we need to have happen here. We have to gut these institutions, gut these agencies. You know, I watched an interview not too long ago from a guy who was in DC, and he just said, look, the problem most of the time, it's not the guy who gets into the White House today. It's these Anthony Fauci's of the world who have been there for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. These institutional, oligarchs there who have been controlling these levers of power on the backside for decades and decades. And so the ATF, these people, they got to go. They got to go. Get them out.
Yeah, one thing, Aaron, I know you want us to switch gears here, but we need to when Republicans are in the majority, we need to drag literally through subpoena power Republicans. If they're not willing to do this, is drag these ATF officials who are the people sitting in a room right now making these decisions and criminalizing tens of millions of Americans. Who are they? What are their names? How did they make these decisions? Who did they work with? Did they work with George Soros or Michael Bloomberg attorneys?
Right.
Soros is also in the news, guys. $125 million he's putting into the election in November. If you think it's safe that we're going to win, or we or Republicans or whoever the hell it is, $125 million Soros just cut a check the other day to save these anti-gun Democrats. And we need to pull these people in front of committees and demand to know who these people are and ask them the tough questions.
It's a very simple rule. I think Alinsky wrote it first. Make the enemy, which the radical left is the enemy, make them live under their own rules that they have put President Trump under, that they have put us under. Make them live according to their own rules. So if Republicans take this back, if Jim Jordan gets like the committee chairmanship of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, for those of you watching Ohio right now, that guy better be doing his job of dragging these people in there and getting answers, doing to them what they're doing right now with this J6 committee. Pull these people in, drag them in, say, who was it? Who did it? And make and reveal it all for all of us to see.
Yeah, I think the next big action item for gun owners, especially if you're in a red state right now, is to realize that after we try to shut down the ATF, or as we're doing that, the real big action then at the state level has got to be the Second Amendment Preservation Act. You see, if you're watching in Missouri right now on the Missouri Firearms Coalition page, you probably have a little bit of a smile on your face right now because you're sitting there under the protections of the Second Amendment Preservation Act in Missouri. And so you know that Missouri troopers, Missouri city cops, and Missouri deputies cannot enforce any of this bullshit. So it doesn't matter when this becomes effective for people in Missouri because there is no local enforcement allowed of this tyranny. That is why we fought so damn hard on this bill last year and made it law in Missouri. No national groups did that. Not a single other organization in Missouri or across America helped us do it, but we got this done. And so now, if you're watching in Iowa, if you're watching in Wyoming, if you're watching in Georgia, if you're watching in Ohio, if you're watching in Idaho, all the rest of the red states, and I guess there's red elements in Pennsylvania and other places too. But if you're watching in red states, this is what you have to demand from your legislators right now in your state capitals. We want SAPA. We do not want any local or state officers being allowed to enforce this tyranny. This is tyranny. And if we simply don't enforce it, guess what? It's going to go away. That's the reality. And as more and more states enact SAPA, there's going to be more and more mass non-compliance, but not just non-compliance, legally required non-compliance. And these state lawmakers will sit there and say, you know what? We're not going for that crap in our state. And as Representative Bobby Kaufman in Iowa said just last week to all the gun grabbers across the state, he gave them a great big middle finger motion. That is the power that they have. That is the power that Republicans have. It's time they use it big time right now.
Yeah, and that's, one other thing I want to mention. I think one of the last points I really think is important here is just the idea that, Democrats know what's coming in 2022, and in many ways, they're okay with it. Because as what Patrick was saying just a couple of minutes ago, Patrick, about how the Republicans, when they get power back, they need to go on major offense and force these people who are behind these rules and these rulings to account for what they've done and reverse those things. But what Democrats have become used to is just this idea that, well, when Republicans get control again, they're not going to reverse what we did. They might put a stay on things for maybe a couple of years. But when we get power back, we're going to keep on going here. We saw, and maybe it's a little bit early to tell, but when Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia, he did some interviews right after, and he just said, yeah, we're not doing much or anything on guns in Virginia, where the Democrats have annihilated the Second Amendment in Virginia in almost every single way. The reason that gun owners put people like Youngkin in there is to reverse all of that crap, to take it all back. And so, but Democrats have come to rely on the Youngkins of the world just holding the spot for a year or two or four. And now they're going to do the same thing in Congress if the Republicans don't turn around and hammer as hard as they possibly can when they get the power back to reverse this crap and defend the Second Amendment, advance the Second Amendment, pass these pro-gun bills, eliminate the ATF, do the national reciprocity, all the rest of that stuff. It needs to happen, and Republicans need to lead the way on that stuff. So Democrats go, you know what? We don't like losing majorities anymore, and Republicans are going to take it all back.
But we're
getting some. We're getting some questions real quick, Chris. Roger just asked, just tried to go to joinafa.com. Roger, it's joinafa.org. Joinafa.org. There you go, Chris, popping it up there. And lots of people are coming on. We've got David Graves is in. If you want to hear your name read, guys, go ahead and join up at joinafa.org. We got Dennis Bailey, Christopher Laidlaw has just come in, Chris Burnham.
Hey.
Art Tarantino, Edward Cooper, Joseph Leone, Tim Blevins, Linda Boer, James Drudge. All of these people are coming on board now as members of the American Firearms Association because they know just how important these fights are. So head over, guys, to joinafa.org and hop on board.
Well, one thing I was just going to add to what Ben was talking about there, and that is, he was saying that Republicans are going to have to do this. Well, I know for a fact that the Republicans, there's going to be a huge sentiment of, yeah, now we're in power. Now we don't want to do anything, controversial, because look what happened to the Democrats. They did controversial things, like pulling out of Afghanistan and arming ISIS and all that different kind of stuff. We don't want to lose our chances in 2 years, so we're not going to do anything. We as gun rights organizations are not going to let them do nothing. You're watching this play out right now in Ohio. You've watched it play out in Iowa over a decade. You watch this happen all over the place. These groups, this group right here, American Firearms Association, we are absolutely going to be pressuring Republicans that they've got to do these things, that doing nothing is still a targetable offense at election time, because it's not acceptable for nothing to be rolled back when the Democrats have made so much progress towards their goals. I think the statement it's kind of a known fact in politics today, and that is the Democrats pass absolutely everything that they can, and they let Republicans fight it out in court afterwards. And you're guaranteed to lose that way. So it's time for these Republicans Especially when they get these powerful positions like the Judiciary Committee. We've watched Nadler and all these different people just put our president through the absolute ringer, and just concoct bullshit to further promote their narrative. It's time that our side, the Republicans, here's essentially what they could do: is they need to sit down and watch the movie The Untouchables. Particularly, they only need to watch one part of it.
One scene.
The one scene where Sean Connery is telling Elliot Ness, Kevin Costner, they put one of yours in the hospital, we put one of theirs in the morgue. That's the Chicago way. That's what the Republicans need to do. They need to develop the Chicago way of dealing with these people. So oftentimes they like to hide behind the banner of being nicer than Jesus. No, it's a culture war that we are in, and it's time to take off the gloves and get to it and start swinging.
You want to somebody recap this thing? We got a couple people asking. You want to run down it, Aaron?
The quick recap here, folks, is that after Biden signed these executive orders last year, we now have today on the Federal Registry published the ATF's intentions as early as it's June of this year when it comes to 80% lower receivers, and August of this year when it comes to pistol braces. They're going to require these items to be registered as an NFA item, a National Firearms Act item. Of course, the NRA also endorsed that crap back in 1934 as well. And so for anybody in the country who has a pistol brace right now, and the Congress, the Congressional Research Office says 10 to 40 million Americans have these items. If you own that item by itself, it's not going to be illegal. But if you attach it to a firearm, in other words, if you use it, then it would be a felony offense unless you have a tax stamp with the ATF and are part of the National Firearms Act program. Chris?
So that's how they're getting around the wide use clause. They're saying, oh, it's not illegal if you own one of these. It's just illegal if you use it for its intended purpose, if you actually make a firearm out of it.
Exactly.
And what they're doing there is they're appealing to the people who say mentally in themselves, well, it's just a bump stock. I don't really need these things. Well, it's just a pistol brace. Do I really? Is this a hill that I want to die on? Or it's just an 80% lower. It's a ghost gun. Some crimes have been committed with these things. I'll stick with my bullshit. You cannot let those evil thoughts come into your way of thinking. They craft these things to take advantage of that. And we need to fight back against that.
Well, people get used to it, right? Gun owners get used to it. Most gun owners are used to the fact that they have to do a tax stamp to have an SBR, so if you just have a gun that's 1 inch shorter than it was today, it's now illegal unless you go through this whole process. And so, fast forward 5 years from now, they're relying on gun owners being used to the idea that they have to pay the $200 and get the tax stamp for a pistol brace. And that they do away with all so-called unregistered firearms. When I think, just a side note, when I think of the idea of registering, of like an actual gun registry, like, here, government, here's this rifle that I own, and here's this other rifle that I own. Thank you. It fills me with rage. So what are we looking at? I agree.
Nothing. We'll talk about that later.
No. That's where I'm at on all of this stuff. They're relying on gun owners becoming complacent, complying, and just sort of, it just is the way it is. Now we just can't have those. So I'll just have to. It's just $200, I guess. Bullshit. Fight back, everybody. Fight back.
Yep.
Josh asks, wouldn't the Supreme Court strike this down? What gives you any confidence? And I don't mean to be critical, Josh, and I don't claim to be a Supreme Court scholar either, but what gives us any confidence that the Supreme Court would strike down bureaucratic rules? I mean, I guess we have some on COVID that they've struck down, but I mean, seems like there's a lot of precedent at the ATF that they just do whatever the hell they want to do.
Honestly, I mean, a lot of national gun groups, the idea of fighting stuff in court is a last ditch resort. It's like the last thing that you can do.
Preach it.
And you have all these national groups out there who are acting like fighting stuff in court is the first line of defense. We're going to fight this in the Supreme Court. We're going to fight this in this. No, it's not.
Wrong.
That's what you do when you have failed at stopping legislation from passing. This is what happens when it's already been rammed through whatever process the left and the rhinos decide to utilize to pass this stuff. That is not your first line of defense. And
we know how that ultimately turns out, right? Watch any epic battle movie that you can think of, right? Like Lord of the Rings or Troy or something like that. The legislative process is the great big giant wall that surrounds and fortifies everything that you love: your women, your family, your kids, your rights, your freedoms, your ability to walk and live freely as an American. But what happens when that orc comes running with that thing and jumps in there and blows the outer wall? I mean, the cities fall. That's unless you have, some magic up your sleeve. But that's just what happens.
Last ditch effort.
It's yeah. So what we're talking about here, fighting back against this stuff, defunding the left, defunding the ATF. That's where this stuff is really safeguarded, because, just firing executive orders back and forth each time there's an administration change. That's,
right, because we all felt
lame as hell.
We felt great for 4 years under Trump, and we all knew that music is going to stop, whether it's after 4 years or after 8 years. And now all of us are on the opposite side of that, and our freedoms Our freedoms are not. Let me calm down here a little bit. A freaking tennis. What do you call it? Come on, help me out here. Tennis table tennis ball. Ping pong ball. Our gun rights are not a ping pong ball, and that's all we're seeing right now. And so we have got to stop this idea that the White House is going to be the arbiter of our freedoms, or the court is the arbiter of our freedoms. These are God-given rights. And folks, there's no other country like this on earth. That's why the fight is here now, because all these globalist bastards via the UN small arms show, all the rest of these things, they know that the American people are the only armed people of this magnitude in the country, in the world. And if they can just topple us, then you know what? Then it becomes a lot easier across the globe to subjugate people. That's it. And so, but part of that fight, again, I want to be too repetitive, but I'm reading Dennis Bailey's comment here. Part of this fight begins by fixing the way gun owners, the way we fight for our freedoms. And so Dennis asks a question. He says, doesn't the registry already exist from the forms we fill out when we buy a new firearm? Dennis, my man, first of all, you don't have to always fill the paperwork. You don't have to buy a firearm from a gun dealer. You don't have to go on the government's database via the 4473 form. If you want to prioritize a private sale, which you should be doing, you can do that. But this idea that well, we already have to, we already have these chains, and we're already wearing them. So if there's a little more pressure added to the handcuff, what's the big deal? This is exactly the failure of the gun rights community. Again, this pressure here lies on, I believe, the NRA. This is the organization that made this cool. They made it hip.
Right.
We're okay with the National Firearms Act. We're okay with the National Gun Control Act. We're okay with Brady. We're okay with fixed NICS. We're okay with the bump stock ban. We're okay with all this shit because it's not quite as bad as something else. And you fast forward now almost 100 years after the National Firearms Act of 1935, and now we see the ramifications of this compromise. And now we see what it looks like when you concede. And folks, that's all they have been doing for a very, very long time. All of us guys here work in state capitals across the country. I'll be testifying in committee tomorrow on gun bills. And we have never seen the NRA in many cases get involved in these fights until the last minute. The NRA is actively warring against SAPA legislation right now in state capitals across the country. The NRA has advocated the field in Washington, D.C., where AFA is routinely working on Capitol Hill. This attitude of giving these guys a little bit of space because, you know what, it's not that big of a deal, has all but tanked our Second Amendment freedoms. As Josh says, death by 1,000 cuts. So as gun owners, we have got to reject that failed philosophy and fight like hell, because we cannot afford one more 100-year time span like we've had over the last 100 years.
The left has always had a spectacular ability to have a long-term goal in mind.
Yes.
And the right, in many ways, we've done this. How does have I heard that before? Like, thank God it's Friday. Oh God, it's Monday. Type of attitude, like living
Right.
2 days into the future. That's how the right's been on a lot of this stuff.
They've had to, right, Ben? I mean, they've had to, because America was this great, big, beautiful, free country that carved our freaking freedom out of the tyranny of England. And so in order to bring America down to her knees, they've had to have that kind of a long-term plan.
Yes. Well, and that's exactly what it has been. So don't think about what an 80% lower means to you today. We've all been making this point. Think about what it'll be like 10 years from now when gun owners forget what it was ever like to have a firearm that was unregistered with the government. When we forget what it was like to be able to go down to our gun store and buy a pistol brace and put on and make a new AR-15 pistol. People will forget about those freedoms. They'll forget they ever existed. Like we have forgotten so many others. Most people can't even fathom what it was like to live back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, back in the golden age of so many things. We've become so used to freedoms get taken away a little bit at a time. Then you wake up tomorrow, and the next big fight against our Second Amendment is maybe relatively small, and then the next one's relatively small, and next thing you know, it's just all gone. And meanwhile, the left has been sitting over there going, man, I hated having to be so complacent or so in the background back in the 90s, but we're rocking in 2020s, baby. We're doing all sorts of tyrannical things we were working so hard on 20 and 30 years ago, and now we're full speed ahead. That's how the left has been. The right needs to get with the game. Gun owners need to get with the game here and recognize that even a tiny bit of tyranny, even the smallest infringement, if you want to ban one freaking red dot scope, you're going to get a massive hell no from the American Firearms Association and the more than a dozen state level gun rights organizations that we represent. You will have to crawl over broken glass to pass that shit, and we're going to oppose you every step of the way. It drives me crazy. Get with it.
Yep. I put that comment up there by Tyler, and I thought that this is an excellent thing. I want to draw some attention to for just a moment. This wraps into everything that Ben was just talking about. But Tyler says, where were our parents and grandparents on this? It's pretty ridiculous that they let it get this bad. No more. My
Yes.
kids won't deal with the anti-2A BS.
Let's be the generation.
I just want to focus in on there for a second, Tyler, because what you've touched on there is precisely why the Door brothers, why Patrick, why we got involved, why we started doing gun politics in the way that we do it, where we start by targeting Republicans because they're the ones failing, and then start talking about the Democrats. This is why we started Iowa Gun Owners, Ohio Gun Owners, Minnesota Gun Rights, all the platforms that you're watching on right now. This is why we started, because we feel it just like you feel it right now, that we could not let things go the way they were, that we couldn't just fight the way things were done back in the 1990s, that if we do, we are going to lose, and it won't be previous people, previous generations, and God bless them. I love so many things about the people that have gone before us in the gun rights community. There's a lot of bad stuff there too, but they won't be around to feel and watch the destruction of our country if we let things continue the way it was. That's why we started these groups. That's why we started the American Firearms Association. So, folks, if you agree with this, if you feel, to borrow a line off of V for Vendetta, if you feel like we feel, if you think as we think on these things, please become a member of the American Firearms Association today. We are ramping up. We are escalating this. We're bringing on staff. We're developing, an operation in Washington, D.C. It's time to raise an army across the country on these things, not just at the state level, but at the federal level. We have to fight everywhere, all the time. We can't let any of this space be just abdicated to the left, or abdicated to rhinos, or abdicated to broke, dumb, or people who are sitting there twiddling their thumbs, thinking that we can fight in the 1990s style. We can't afford it. I've got 8 kids. All these people here have a lot of kids. We need to fight tooth and nail. When we sit here and we take action as a body of people all mobilized and marching together, we need to sit here and think about what we would do now in the comfortable 2022 that we live in America. What would we do to make sure that our kids didn't have to live in a totally communist state where there's jackboot thugs going door to door and kicking away our freedoms? We have to channel that and commit ourselves to fighting as hard as we possibly can right now. So, folks, we're asking you to take action. We're asking you to join the American Firearms Association. The website is right there. You can screenshot, if you're watching this on your phone, you can screenshot that web address. It's joinafa.org to sign up and become a member. Also, you can go to the title to this video and sign and submit your petition in support of Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill to eliminate the ATF. It is time for Republicans. It is time for gun owners to go on the attack and fight back against this stuff. So I think that's all we've got for tonight, folks. We'll be back with more in our next video. Until then, I'm not going to use that phrase. Stay free. Stay free. Stay free. And don't apologize to anybody for it. Have a good night.
Share our video,
guys.
folks. Take care.
See you guys.